allegiance. Good morning, everyone. All right. Approval of the county board minutes. I have a motion and a second. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Any additions or deletions? Motion and a second I need, please. I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Not. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Just to let everybody know, please shut your cell phones off if you got them on. Also, we are missing one county board member. Jeff Jelinski will not be here today, so just we'll move on at that. At this time, distractions-free driving proclamation. Deb.
Well, turn it over to those that are here to join us.
And if you want, you can come right up to the podium. Please state your name.
My kids are not here. Okay.
You know what? How about can we move to the national crimes victims?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
So there is an addition or a deletion.
There's a change. We just
A change. Come on up, please.
we can make that.
We'll make that work definitely. And state your name, please.
Morning.
Good
Deanna
morning.
Thompson.
Morning, Dan.
Whereas providing victims with knowledge of their rights and available services further strengthens their ability to recover by restoring a sense of self-empowerment. Whereas victims who feel understood and supported are more likely to disclose their victimization, seek services, and participate in the justice process. Whereas a multidisciplinary response involving collaboration among victim service professionals, criminal justice officials, legal professionals, medical and mental health providers, and community leaders is essential to reach and serve all victims, especially those who are marginalized, have disabilities, or live in remote locations. Whereas National Crime Victims' Rights Week, April 7 through 13, 2019, provides an opportunity to recommit to ensuring that all victims of crime, especially those who are challenging to reach or serve, are afforded their rights and receive a trauma-informed response. Whereas Hands of Hope Resource Center is hereby dedicated to strengthening victims and survivors in the aftermath of crime, building resilience in our communities and our victim responders, and working for justice for all victims and survivors. Now therefore, be it resolved that Morrison County and the Board of Commissioners proclaim the week of April 7 through 13, 2019 to be National Crime Victims' Rights Week.
Gentlemen, I'll ask for a motion. I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? We have three other ladies up there. Who else do we have?
I'm Julie Capsch. I'm the Assistant Director at Hands of Hope.
Stephanie Ack, Executive Director.
Amanda Caping, Sexual Assault Coordinator.
Good morning. Gentlemen, any more discussion on?
I just like to say thank you for everything you do and helping out those, especially helping out those with disabilities. It's a great thing. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you too for all you do. It's nice when you're not needed, but when you are needed, I'm glad that somebody's there to help. So thank you.
And if I may ask, are you looking for volunteers, or is this something that you just do on your own, or how do we go about reaching out to you?
Well, we're always recruiting for volunteers. We have an online training process now, so if anyone's ever interested, they can just call Hands of Hope and ask for Amanda. I can fill them in.
So you have a website, or are you, okay?
It's on our website, it's on Facebook, it's all over out there.
I'm just trying to get you on wherever here, to get you out in Neverland here,
So
to promote you.
www.handsofhope.net.
There we go. All right, again, thank you very much, appreciate it. Are we gonna do a photo op, or are we gonna wait till everything is all done? Pardon? Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right.
Thank you.
Hands of Hope has one more, so I'll maybe have that
Oh,
one.
okay. All right. That's right, yeah.
So April is also Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So whereas sexual assault is an intolerable violent crime with public health implications for every person in Morrison County, either as a victim, survivor, a loved one, or a community member. And whereas the voices of those who have been victims of sexual violence must be heard through public awareness and education activities. And whereas in fiscal year 2018, Hands of Hope Resource Center served 142 new sexual assault victims and their loved ones in Morrison County. And whereas nearly 3 out of 4 adolescents who have been sexually assaulted were victimized by someone they knew well. Whereas no one person, organization, or community can eliminate sexual violence on their own. The Board of Commissioners joins Hands of Hope Resource Center in believing that all Morrison County residents must be part of the solution to eliminate crimes of sexual violence. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Morrison County and the Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim April 2019 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in honor of all Morrison County residents who have made a conscious and dedicated decision to end sexual violence.
Jen will ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any more discussion? If I may, the same thing applies. You go on the website, and if you have, probably need volunteers or whatever on here. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what's the name of your website?
It's the same as our
Is
Hands
it
of
all
Hope.
the same,
Yep.
under the
Yep.
same? Okay. All right. Gentlemen, any more?
No, just thank you again for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We have a motion, a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Do you guys want to come up to the podium, but don't trip up? Front of the podium. Should we come up behind you?
Sneak together here.
It's nice sitting in the middle.
Perfect.
She must have been talking about you, Randy, when she said perfect.
Must have been.
Let's go back to distractions-free proclamation. And who do we have here? Come on in.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being flexible. Emily Loomis, I'm a community health educator with Morrison County Public Health. I'm going to give a brief overview about TZD, and then I'll have the kids introduce themselves. So Towards Zero Deaths is a traffic safety initiative that has been around Minnesota for over 15 years. The past several years, we've had a Safe Roads grant in Morrison County, which allows us to coordinate a group of community partners. We focus on outreach and enforcement of the most common factors that result in serious injury or death in a crash. Overall, the number of crashes that result in death and serious injury have trended downwards the last 15 years. However, there are the big 4 factors that continue to be an issue, especially in Morrison County. So these factors are impairment, seatbelt use, speed, and then distraction. So the month of April is focused on distracted driving. We have a wonderful partnership with the youth in our schools. We work closely with these students to spread traffic safety messaging to their peers and the community as a whole. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Introduce yourselves first.
My name's Emma Toms-Warzeka, and I'm a senior at Little Falls Community High School.
My name is Robert Jarvis. I'm also a senior.
My name is Ben Jacobson. I'm also a senior.
My name's Jordan Funk. I'm a senior at Pierce Healy High School.
My name's Haley Cook, and I'm a sophomore.
Sheila Watercott from Little Falls Schools.
A proclamation by the Morrison County Safe Roads Coalition in partnership with Morrison County's Sheriff's Department and Little Falls Community High School students. Whereas the safety and security of the citizens of Morrison County and surrounding areas are vitally important, and whereas a large percentage of our citizens regularly drive or ride in motor vehicles on our roadways, and whereas distracted driving occurs when drivers divert their attention away from the task of driving to focus on another activity instead, and
Whereas distracted driving can result in injuries and deaths to motorists, pedestrians, and bicyclists. And whereas the health and well-being of our citizens are a direct result of increased awareness about the danger of distracted driving, and whereas text messaging, emailing, and accessing the web on wireless devices while driving, including while stopped in traffic, become illegal in Minnesota roads effective August 1st, 2008, and
Whereas, according to the Office of Traffic Safety, each year in Minnesota, distracted or inattentive driving is a factor in 1 of 4 crashes, resulting in at least 70 deaths and 350 serious injuries. And whereas, the Morrison County Safe Roads Coalition supports efforts that help raise awareness of the dangers of distracted driving, particularly amongst teenagers, in order to both reduce the number of distracted driving crashes and to better educate drivers. And whereas Morrison County law enforcement will be participating in increased enforcement all month to reduce the risk of injury and death caused in traffic crashes related to distracted or inattentive driving. And
whereas distracted driving is a serious, life-threatening practice and is preventable, and whereas in order to reduce the number of crashes as well as improve driver safety, motorists should dedicate themselves to adopting and maintaining safe behavior while behind the wheel, and whereas one of the most effective means of encouraging safer and smarter behavior by motorists involves convincing drivers of the need to devote their full attention and energy to driving by avoiding distractions such as cell phones, texting, eating, drinking, adjusting vehicle and music controls, and reaching for items, and
Whereas, in order to reduce the number of crashes as well as improve driver safety, Morrison County motorists should dedicate themselves to adopting and maintaining safe behavior while behind the wheel. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Board of the Morrison County Commissioners of the great state of Minnesota, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2019 Distracted Free Driving Month in Morrison County, and we call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens.
Gentlemen, I'll ask for a motion and a second.
So moved.
second.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Just I want to thank you for bringing awareness. It seems like everybody's guilty of what we're talking about here, you know, with cell phones, eating. Seems like we think our cars are the inside of our homes, and we do need to pay attention. And I'm glad that you just keep bringing us aware of everybody, because it's hard to change habits.
Myself, we should have something. I was down in the cities yesterday. It's not just for you young adults. The older generation from after graduation, it's just amazing the people that are on their phones. And I was in front of me, one guy was kind of talking to this other person on the other car, pretending he was on a phone, and they were kind of having a little discussion through the windows. I don't know what they all said, but it wasn't good. So it's just, it's amazing how many people are on a cell phone. So again, thank you for what you guys do and what you bring the attention to what these can do.
Thank you.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
You guys want to come up and take a picture with the board? If you can, you can just come up behind them here. Do that.
There it was.
Just don't trip on the cord. Later in the meeting. Thank you.
Nowadays they pull guns out.
Yeah. But it's all right. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Theater's a sport.
That's a sport. There you go.
Thanks, guys.
Cedar, huh? Okay, one more. Okay, Morrison County Volunteer Network proclamation. morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, very good. Well, there again, this week now is being announced as the National Volunteer Recognition Week. So the proclamation reads, whereas the entire community can affect positive change with any volunteer action, no matter how big or small, and whereas volunteers can connect with local community service opportunities through hundreds of community service organizations like the Morrison County Volunteer Network, and whereas more than 1,172 volunteers working in Morrison County utilize nearly 100,000 hours of their time and talent to make a real difference in the lives of children, adults, and the elderly, and whereas during Volunteer Appreciation Week all over the nation, service projects will be performed and volunteers recognized for their commitment to service, and whereas the giving of oneself in service to another empowers the giver and the recipient, and whereas experience teaches us that government by itself cannot solve all of our nation's social problems, and whereas our country's volunteer force of over 64.5 million people is a great treasure, and whereas volunteers are vital to our future as a caring and productive nation. Now, therefore, we as commissioners for Morrison County do hereby proclaim April 7th through April 13th as National Volunteer Recognition Week. In Morrison County, we urge our fellow citizens to volunteer and light the way in their communities. By volunteering and recognizing those who serve, we can build our communities with understanding and compassion.
Gentlemen, I'll ask for a motion and a second.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion. I need a second. Any more discussion? I'll say volunteers. Where do you get your volunteers from?
Wherever we can recruit.
All right.
Mr. Chair, we have a number of different organizations
Yeah,
represented.
I see that, yep.
Take a minute to introduce yourselves and let us know what you do.
Sure, I'm Christine Hoheisel. I'm with Horizon Health and Peers, and I run the Faith in Action. So we have about 58 volunteers in our program.
Welcome.
John Knopf with the Central Minnesota Foster Grandparent Program. We currently have 16 volunteers here in Morrison County. We take volunteers that are 55 or better and put them in schools to help kids.
Megan Cruz with Morrison County United Way. I'm the executive director. We have a great number of volunteers that are utilized for all of our fundraising events and our campaign season. So all of our help is from volunteers.
Rose Surma, Oasis Central Minnesota. We heavily rely on volunteers. Last year we had just under 10,000 volunteer hours that helped fundraising and run our programs.
Julia Mueller with the Friends of Linden Hill. We care for and sustain the historic property here in Little Falls. And thousands of hours by volunteers. We have approximately 200 volunteers that are active throughout the year. Some of them volunteering thousands of hours, some of them with what they can, especially as people are volunteering while they're still working and then getting into retirement where they're maybe open and available for more hours.
Amanda Keeping, Hands of Hope. We currently have 8 wonderful, dedicated volunteers who answer a 24-hour crisis line.
I'm Gina Vetter with the Chamber of Commerce, and we obviously have hundreds of volunteers. The majority of them we use during our Arts and Crafts Fair event that happens in Little Falls.
I'm Sherry Post. I'm with New to You Thrift Store. I have a total of probably about 21 volunteers now.
And I'm Linda Johnson, Volunteer Services Management at the hospital, and we have 268 volunteers and nearly 22,000 hours of service last year. So totally a lot of the community support is really blessed at our hospital, so thank you.
Anything else, gentlemen?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the opportunity for this board to be able to recognize all of these tremendous individuals and the people that they represent who volunteer in our community and make a tremendous difference behind the scenes. So thank you.
Agreed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. I will ask for all in favor.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Must be photo op time again. All right.
Trip on the court, I'm always that little head in the back.
Hi. Good morning. Good morning.
flashing.
Did I? Does it keep flashing?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. Perfect. Got it?
Thank you. Appreciate it. Get out of here.
Right? Yeah. Whatever. I can do. Thank you. Thank you.
Last but not least with our proclamations.
Yeah, I'll
No,
wait
there's
till-
2 more?
Yeah, there's 2 more.
Oh,
Child abuse, I'll just let them.
not last.
Okay, National Public Safety Proclamation. Sheriff Larson.
Mr. Chair, April is a busy proclamation month, so thank you for your patience.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Morning, Sheriff.
So at this time, I'm going to call our Chief Deputy Jason Worley, Sergeant Doug Rexted up here, as well as our dispatcher Peggy Zimney. Those 2 other guys and myself, we're just here to support our dispatcher. So it's a proclamation regarding Telecommunicators Week, so I'll start. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services. And whereas Morrison County dispatchers efficiently coordinate emergency services for both man-made and natural disasters to ensure the health and safety of our community. And whereas public safety dispatchers are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with the emergency services. And whereas public safety dispatchers are the single vital link for our police officers, firefighters, and first responders by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information, and ensuring their safety. And whereas, while enduring shift work and frequent emergencies, Morrison County dispatchers continue to perform their duties in a dedicated, diligent, and loyal manner. Now, therefore, the County Commissioners of Morrison County do hereby proclaim, in conjunction with the National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week, the week of April 14th through the 20th, 2019. And before I turn it over, I was just going to say we do have 11 dispatchers, 9 of whom are full-time. With us today is Peggy Zimney, a veteran dispatcher. She has 28 years of full-time experience, 20-plus years of training other dispatchers. And I can tell you, I was one of those dispatchers back in 1999, and I'm sure if you ask Peggy, she'll tell you it was pretty easy training, but just kidding. Anyway, our dispatchers dispatch for multiple law enforcement agencies, fire departments, first responders, ambulance services. So obviously we feel it's important that we recognize our dispatchers. We believe that they're the voice that is always heard but seldom seen. And our dispatchers are the first true responders, as all responders for services start with them. All responses for services start with them. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board.
Before we do that, I'll ask for a motion and a second, gentlemen.
Make a motion, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion, I need a second. Second. Any more discussion? Go ahead and turn it over to your, we're going to have them talk too a little bit.
Well, Mr. Chair, I think we should ask Peggy, because she's been doing this a few years. And whenever I do tours with groups that come in, the dispatch is always very willing to tell either the kids or groups of adults what they do. And one question I like to ask, and I always think is interesting, is what's changed the most? Peggy, you've been doing this 28 years. It clearly, most certainly doesn't look like it did from when you started.
No, not at all. Actually, technology was the biggest change. Just because when I first started there, they didn't have address signs even. So it was pretty much all direction based. You had to get information and go from like landmarks, and then all the computer technology, and then cell phones and just up the call volume. So
It's pretty amazing. I think each station has 9 or 10 computer monitor screens with different programs that they're running, and the radio is all computer based, the telephones are all computer based, everything is. It's amazing what they do. It's a lot of multitasking, it takes a lot of concentration, and I've always I continue to be impressed with the employees that we have that can do that day in and day out and really fill that important piece of public safety, so thank you.
Gentlemen, any more discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to thank you. I know a little bit about what you do. I've seen it. We've seen some movies and slides on when there's some real disasters, and the dispatchers are the ones that really have to control everything, and I don't think people understand the fact that you can get hundreds of phone calls in a matter of a few minutes from all over the country. You know, you think everything is right here, but I know not everybody can do that job, and I thank you that can.
Thank you so much. I listen to you guys all day when I'm at work, and the types of calls and the amount of calls you get, and you run everything. You are like a concert, whatever you call them guys that are
Conductor.
Like
There we go.
conductor of the EMS, the fire, and the law enforcement officials, and you do a great job, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And like the sheriff said, you're the unseen heroes, the ones in the front line that, you know, no one really knows about. If there's an accident or anything, well, the sheriff's department here, they forget about the dispatch or for whatever it may be. And like Deb said, I'm assuming like years ago when you had a car accident, you're lucky to get one phone call. You probably get 10, 15 on that same phone call, and you got to answer them all, you know. So again, I appreciate what the dispatch does. I think it's another thing that I appreciate that we honor for the week. So gentlemen, I have a motion to discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
I'll pay you on a picture taken too. Yes. We gotta put you in there. These guys in there.
Thanks, Peggy.
Conference in order, or is this good?
Yeah, Sean, you can make turn around.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
You should have said that. That would have been awesome.
Now, Mr. Chair, last but not least.
Time and a place.
Child Abuse Prevention Proclamation.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm Melanie Erickson from Social Services here for the Child Protection Team, and that is a community organization that is its own nonprofit to offer parenting supports. And I'd just like to have each introduce themselves and where they're from, and then Kim will read the proclamation.
Amanda Cabing, Hands of Hope Resource Center.
Kim DeZurek, I'm the collaborative coordinator for Morrison County.
Anita Larson, school social worker at Lincoln, and Dr. Knight and Randall.
Dina Wellner, I work at Tri-County Community Action.
Karen Ottman, Child and Teen Checkup Coordinator for Morrison County Public Health.
Okay, so I'm going to read the proclamation for National Child Abuse Prevention Month. Whereas child abuse and neglect continue to be a problem within our society, and whereas April has been declared National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and whereas Minnesota has initiated many efforts to promote child abuse prevention programs within counties, and whereas Morrison County has promoted such programs and recognizes that children and families are an important part of our society, needing the support and protection of our community, and whereas Morrison County recognizes the dedicated work of community professionals, neighbors, and extended family that provide assistance to prevent and intervene in cases of child abuse and support to parents. And whereas special thanks given to the Morrison County Child Protection Team, Prevention Council, and the interagency members for the efforts, funding, and provision of parenting education and support through Circle of Parents support group, families programs, kindness retreats, educational website, and the child abuse prevention curriculum provided to schools in Morrison County, and
Whereas the Morrison County Child Protection Team recognizes and supports the efforts of parents, extended family, friends, and neighbors of children to provide a safe and loving environment for children. Now, therefore, be it resolved that April is hereby declared Child Abuse Prevention Month in Morrison County.
Gentlemen, I'll ask for a motion and a second.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Any more discussion?
Give it to Mike.
Give it to Mike.
I want to decide.
I just want to, again, all the organizations that were here today, again, it's just amazing that what goes on in our county that, a lot of people, I'm sure, just don't realize what this benefits our county. And it's just like child prevention. Again, you're behind the scenes. You really don't know most people don't know what's going on there. So, again, I appreciate all the work all the organizations do and yourself here as now. So, anything else?
Just like to say thank you all.
Yep, thank you very much.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, if you want to come back behind the board up here in a second.
He did. He gave me 2. You can leave them here. Paper copies, not mixed copies.
How you doing there? Good, good.
All right, perfect. All right, thank you. Oh, one more, sorry. Oops. I did. We are quick to leave.
I gotta put that chair back to keep it in there.
Pretty excited to get back to work.
Yeah.
Get my toe.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Take care. Take care. Thank you. This is not a proclamation, is it? Council on Aging? No, it's not. Yeah, update. Okay, Council on Aging. If you want, would you want to, you can sit right here, please?
Okay.
And it's here, I got it.
And I am the photo op free presenter today, so the first one.
All right. You can take a picture if you want, though.
No, that's okay. I'll do without. So thank you for having me here again this year. I always welcome the opportunity to just give you an update on what the Council on Aging is doing and what the impacts are of the dollars that we award out specifically in Morrison County. As you know, the Council on Aging, we are a nonprofit and we cover the 14-county area. We're designated by the Minnesota Board on Aging to serve as the area agency on aging for the 14-county area. And so with that role, we have 3 key responsibilities I'll just go over briefly today. At the foremost is our administration of the Federal Older Americans Act funding, operation of the senior linkage line, and in program development. So with the administration of the Federal Older Americans Act funding, we award out about $3.5 million a year for services that providers offer that help keep older adults in their homes and support the family caregivers. And our target focus, it's 60 plus, but our target population is we're trying to have the providers focus on the individuals who are low income. Most of them are not yet on medical assistance and under the waiver, and we're trying to get services in place so that we can keep them financially stable with those supports. And the services through Older Americans Act funding are not means tested, so income is not part of eligibility. Any individual over age 60 can receive the service, and it's done on a client contribution donation basis. So they're not charged a fee for the services being provided. And the services, there's a combination of different models. Some of the programs use strictly volunteers, some use paid staff, and others use a combination of paid and volunteers. And we're seeing that more and more right now as there's very much a volunteer shortage. So in 2019, we awarded just over $164,000 to providers in Morrison, providers to provide service in Morrison County. That's about 5% of our overall funds that we have available. We award out just over $3 million a year. Some of the examples of the providers that we fund is Lutheran Social Services, the Senior Law Project out of Legal Aid, Horizon, Faith in Action. I know I seen Christine here earlier. So in that chart that you have, this is 2018 figures, and this is specifically clients that were served in Morrison County. So you can see with transportation, 62 individuals received 1,325 rides. The rides are primarily to doctor's appointments or coming to the county to apply for services, going to the grocery store and helping them grocery shop and bring the groceries back home. Those are probably the top 3 types of rides that are being provided. 7 individuals with 37 hours of chore. The chore types of things that would happen under chore is installing grab rails, installing a ramp, widening, minor home modification types things to make the home more accessible. And you can see some of the other services. Meals is our congregate dining and home delivered meals. 463 people from Morrison County received over 20,000 meals during 2018. And that's, like I said, that's a combination of both congregate and home delivered meals. We have several congregate sites throughout Morrison County. And one of the new things that we're piloting in St. Cloud, and we're in conversations with Lutheran Social Services to bring out to the 5 counties out here, is partnering the meal program with food shelves, where they could bring frozen meals to the food shelves, and the food shelves could send home those frozen meals to individuals over age 60 along with their food commodities. So right now the process that's happening is we're doing research to try to identify the food shelves in the area and the NAPS programs, the nutrition assistance programs for seniors, and figuring out which ones are open around like 11 to 1 o'clock, because the food shelves won't have the ability to store the frozen meals, so it needs to be able to be dispersed during those times. So we're doing research on that, and we'll be working with LSS on hopefully implementing some of that yet this year, and then into 2019, starting in 2020 in more higher force. Legal Aid, the Senior Law Project, helped 55 individuals with legal counsel. 250 hours of legal counsel was provided. A couple things I just want to touch on relating to the programs that we provide funding to, that we're doing some legislative advocacy around, that is really impacting not only the volunteer programs that we provide funding to, but any volunteer programs. One is the mileage with transportation with volunteer drivers programs. What's happening is volunteer drivers programs are getting caught up in the Uber and Lyft. And so what's happening is insurance companies are putting volunteer drivers under ride share. And then what happens is when the individual goes to issue their personal car insurance, the insurance company says, well, you're volunteering, you're providing a ride to somebody else, therefore you are ride sharing and need to have a commercial insurance policy. And we've done a lot of research with the Department of Commerce, and really that volunteer drivers do not fall under that. But the problem is that insurance companies really aren't fully understanding that, and therefore the insurance agents are having individuals go on higher insurance, and what we see is that our volunteer drivers programs are losing volunteers. Fortunately, Christine was able to provide a letter that was actually sent to a volunteer driver from Progressive Insurance, and that was one of the things we've been working on this with the Department of Commerce for 3 years now, and they have kept said, we need actual letters that are coming from the insurance company saying to that individual that they have to go under commercial insurance. And so Christina actually had one from Progressive, and so we were able to share that with the Department of Commerce. And there was a bill that was proposed this session in both the House and the Senate that would clarify that volunteer drivers that receive MnDOT funding would be exempt from rideshare. And we were hoping to be able to work with those legislators then to expand that to any public funded program, not just MnDOT funding. But unfortunately, the bill did not receive a hearing, so it's dead this session. However, next session is policy, so we will continue to work with those legislators on that. The second issue that is impacting volunteers drastically is, and even more drastically, is the issuing of 1099s for any individual that receives over $600 in income, which a lot of volunteer drivers, as well as mainly volunteer drivers, but it is impacting other volunteers as well, are receiving, and they're discontinuing their volunteer service. And I don't have the information for Horizon. I know CAS Faith in Action, after January when they issued theirs out from 2018, they lost 25% of their volunteers. And so it's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed. Congressman Peterson is expected to co-author a bill in the next few weeks that would increase the mileage, the dollar amount for mileage reimbursement before volunteer drivers would fall under that threshold. So that will be something we'll be closely watching and trying to garner support for, because that, as I said, that impacts all volunteer programs, not just the ones that we're funding. But it's hard enough to get volunteers right now, and this is just adding to that. So just to make you kind of aware of that. We are going out, we go up competitively every 3 years for our funding, so we'll be releasing an RFP in May for 2020 funding, and we're hoping we expect to have a few new applicants coming in for services for Morrison County, and hopefully you'll see these service levels increase with that. We're especially targeting caregiver, because we know that with caregivers, the majority of care is provided by the family, and it's critical that we have services and supports in place for those family caregivers so that they can continue to do that. With Senior Linkage, the Senior Linkage program, we operate on behalf of the Department of Health and Human Services, and that's a free service. It ranges from telephone information assistance to going out and working with individuals in their homes and helping them evaluate their situation, get them connected to services, as well as a lot of health insurance counseling. Last year in Morrison County, we provided 3,091 long-term care options counseling sessions. The average phone session is about 20 minutes, and in person is about 2 hours. In your packet, I have an example from Morrison County of a recent couple that one of our Senior Linkage community living specialists went out to visit, and I'll just give a real brief synopsis of that. It was, the son called, his mom and dad live here in Little Falls. His dad is 90, his mother's 86, and he's really concerned that his mother is getting burnt out and was looking to explore moving his father to an assisted living. And so Sonia, our community living specialist, went out and met with the husband and wife, and the mother, her husband has prostate cancer, and he has a catheter that requires daily care and help with dressing and bathing, and it's really causing her a lot of back issues now. And she's 86, and so it's hard on her. They like to go to daily mass and in the morning, and that's hard for her to get him going and be able to get the mass on a daily basis. And so Sonia talked with them about a number of programs and different types of benefits they could tap into. He is a vet, but they really weren't interested in tapping into veterans benefits at this time. They weren't interested really in having help come into the home, and that's not uncommon. So Sonia worked with them on the first step, though, of having a home health aide come in each morning at 7:30 and help with getting her husband up and going, and then doing some light housekeeping while she's there. And so hopefully they'll be able to avoid moving to an assisted living, and she will continue to follow up. She'll follow up the first time in 30 days and then every 60 days afterwards, just to make sure that as their needs progress that they're connected with services. Our last key function that we do is program development, and currently we're really working on focusing on dementia supports in the communities and supporting older adults with chronic illness, and also working with municipalities to prepare them for the aging of our communities. We just are in process of finishing a survey that Commissioner Wilson will hear about at the June board meeting, where we surveyed mayors and township clerks, and then city administrators from the 14-county area to really gauge where they're at with being aware of the aging of their population and what planning efforts they have in place. Currently in Morrison County, 17% of your county is over age 65. In the next 11 years, that will increase substantially as the last of the baby boomers return 65. The oldest of the baby boomers will turn 85, and it's at 85 age where they really start to tap into services. So trying to be looking in this next few years to be working individually with cities and counties on that matter in their planning processes. So that's kind of a summary of the work that's being done in Morrison County. Once again, very thankful for the just over $2,500 that Morrison provides to the Council on Aging on the annual basis, and we use that as match so we can draw down our federal Older Americans Act funds. And I'll be sending out a letter and a request to renew that. I usually send that in June so that you have it for your planning processes, and those are calendar year memorandums that go into place, and the dollar amount will be the same. Our funding's flat, so our request is as well. Do you have any questions?
Anything, gentlemen?
Yes. Mr. Chair, how do individuals that are in need of assistance get a hold of you?
So they can call. They can call our 800 number, and if you're in the 14-county area, it's prefix routed to our office. We also have an outreach site at the clinic here in Little Falls, and the clinic actually schedules the appointments there. We also we receive a list from the Department of Health and Human Services on a weekly basis of individuals that are in the nursing home that are not on public assistance, so they're not on medical assistance and have a case manager already through the county or a health plan. If they've been in there for approaching 45 days, then we get notified to go out into the nursing home and meet with them and talk with them about services that they could use to transition them back home and help them with that process. And then we also have referral processes set up with the hospitals. So it comes from a variety of different points. Providers do a lot of referrals to us as well.
Very good, thank you.
You brought up this insurance. So when for rideshare or whatever, maybe do all insurance companies gonna ask for that? Oh, and I'm gonna have a couple of questions here. You can put them up. So, or when somebody volunteers, do you tell them that you may have to get this? So again, there's a couple of questions that there, I guess.
Yeah. So really, the insurance companies shouldn't be classifying them as rideshare. Department of Commerce put out a brochure that we provide to the volunteer drivers programs to give their volunteer drivers that they can share with their insurance agent that states that. However, that form was put out in 2008, and what we hear from, like Christine, she'll say, I give that to a volunteer, they share that with their insurance agent, and they say it's obsolete. That's a 2008. So one of the things that needs to be done is just having that updated so we can have that communicated. But it really comes through the Department of Commerce because they regulate the insurance agents. But the problem is that it's not clear. It's not clear with insurance companies, and so they're interpreting that they classify as rideshare.
So again, if I give it to my insurance company, they may, you don't need insurance, but the next one might say you do, and that's probably the
Right,
problem.
and that's what we see happening is that because, for example, there's a progressive agent in this area that has the interpretation that they need to classify as rideshare. So we're seeing more volunteers in this area in particular that have progressive that are, because they have the same agent, that are falling into that. And, you may have progressive with another agent, and they may not ask that person if they're transferring. So it's very, it gets very confusing.
It's too bad.
So there needs to be clarity is really what needs to happen.
Well, that's why we got our county attorney here. He'll clarify it for us.
There you go.
Anything else, gentlemen?
I just want to thank you, Lori. I sit on your board, and there's a lot of things you go through every month that are, like it says, it takes finances. It's the rules you got to work under. But I thank you for having an organization there to help people.
Thank you, and we appreciate you and hope you continue to serve on our board in the next term as well.
All right, that's it. Thank you, Lori.
All right, thank you. You guys have a good day.
And here we'll listen to the Initiative Foundation, and then we'll take 10 after that.
Would you like this here? There.
There would be fine.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, staff. Thank you for having us. My name's Don Hickman. I'm the Vice President of Community and of Workforce Development, my title changed, at the Initiative Foundation here in Little Falls.
Carl Newbanks, Grants and Development Manager at the Initiative Foundation.
I know I've had the chance to work with most of you. We're a 33-year-old regional community foundation that supports community and economic development throughout the 14 counties of central Minnesota. This is our annual check-in with you. I know you have received our county impact sheet, a list of many of the grants we've made. I know that all of you know we also provide gap lending. We were created during the farm crisis, and the recognition was that rural communities need a little extra help to have sustained economic development. We don't compete with local banks, but if you're an entrepreneur that's interested in expansion and has a strong business plan, we'll come in after the bank and provide the capital so that you can support that expansion. It can be something as modest as the Babies on Broadway here in Little Falls. We were a key partner of theirs. Or right now we're in conversations with two very significant value-added agricultural processors on the eastern side of the county that are looking at expansions, and we'll be partners with them too. We also make grants. In addition to the ones you've already heard about, there were some that are almost breaking news that I wanted to share with you this morning. Later today, we'll announce formally that Morrison County will be the first community in our Child Care Solutions program. We got a grant earlier this year from the Department of Human Services. The recognition is particularly throughout greater Minnesota, access to quality, affordable child care has become a real barrier to workforce retention and attraction. John Rademacher, the city of Little Falls, is kind of famous for having had to leave his family behind when he moved here because they couldn't initially find child care for their children. The county will receive $10,000 in significant coaching from First Children's Finance, which is a community development financial institution that does nothing but business modeling and assistance to providers and financing. So we're quite confident we can make a dent in the estimated 600 children who currently need care and can't find it in Morrison County. While I'm on the early childhood theme, one of our finest local funds, the Morrison Area County Foundation, is raising money for early childhood literacy and school readiness. And we have a $100,000 match available to them through the end of the year. So every dollar they raise, dedicate to early childhood investments, will match, and they can invest that any way they feel is most needed in the county. Back to economic development for a moment. We've been working very closely with Sprout and Carol Anderson to explore the feasibility of a mobile meat processing facility. A lot of particularly smaller producers lose their profit if they've got to take it a long ways from Morrison County. And our dream is to be able to have something smaller or at least more local, where you could, whether it's local raised, grass-fed, kosher, halal, there's all kinds of niches. And if you got to drive a long ways to get boutique processing, you lose your profit. But if we could have it local, it would benefit our local producers. Little Falls has just received a $7,500 grant to support continued expansion and investment in broadband. Piers is currently raising money to, again, we're matching them dollar for dollar to create a disaster preparedness fund. The goal is to get the fund up to $20,000, and they will reap $1,000 earnings on that annually that they can apply to either equipment or training for their disaster preparedness teams. The incentive of getting that grant annually is that they will keep their disaster plans up to date and make sure that all the numbers and coordinators are accurate in there. But we're very excited about that one. While I'm in Piers, this is actually not on the recent hit list, but we've been very excited about robotics clubs in school districts. The STEM skill sets are what every employer is looking for right now. It's a great way to expose kids to the fun and challenge and application of STEM skills. Our standing offer has been, we'll give any district that doesn't currently have a robotics club a $5,000 challenge match with the intent of getting the local business community engaged. Again, when you suddenly have an adult interested in you that's not your parents, that's the perfect age where it can really get you excited about a career pathway. I had a coach from Upsala call this week, and they're eager to do the same. In fact, he said, I've got 10 other teachers in 10 other districts that I'm going to bring along with me. I'll pause after I mentioned the Veterans Art Memorial up at Camp Ripley is another of the funds we host, and has been doing that long-standing arts project to honor each service, each branch of the service, and has brought in quite a few tourists and veterans from around the country to celebrate that work of art. I could go on, as all of you who know me know. We'd like to pause and say if there are any issues that you'd like to be sure we're thinking about. We're in the middle of our strategic plan. This is the perfect time to get your input. If there's anything we could be doing better, we'd sure love to hear from you. But we appreciate your past support and are very grateful that you have such a healthy county that we can reside in.
Thank you very much.
Again, I just want to make a comment. It's amazing how many projects you guys have actually funded in the last 2 years just by looking at this. And again, you're probably a hidden gem in Morrison County.
I have to say, I asked to get to speak to you today because I can't think of another year where I've had so many things happen in Morrison County. I really am proud of our current work. And again, it's part of why I love to get in front of you. Our best projects come through conversation when somebody calls us up and says, here's what I'm worried about or excited about. And we can't fund everything, but often those conversations lead to a good proposal or resource referral to somebody else who can help.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Anything else? All right, appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you all. Thank you.
All right, we'll take 10. Okay, we'll proceed. Mudfest. I'll ask the applicant to come up to the podium. And then, of course, we have the sheriff's office. So I will let you present. We will take your comments. We'll take the sheriff's comments. After that, We'll open it up to the public, and we'll give everybody 3 minutes. Again, I want you to address the board, not the sheriffs or not the applicant. So again, that's what I'll require you to do. This is not going to be a questions and answer. It'll be a comment for the public hearing. And then after that, we'll let the board ask some questions if they have any, and then we'll bring it to a vote. And then before we do that, we'll have a little bit more discussion if you, as the applicant only, and the Sheriff's Department has any comments or questions. Does that sound good, Brian?
Sounds fine.
All right. Please do state your name for the record.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm Adam Ripple, legal counsel for Mudfest. I've got Jake and Ralph and Ron. I think you're probably all familiar with them. Appreciate the opportunity to have a little bit more time to work through the application. We were here at the last board meeting. Understand big concern was minor consumption of alcohol at the event. That is a concern of the Wrinkles as well. They don't want to foster that. The sheriff had proposed 2 different conditions to address that. There are problems with both of those from the perspective of Mudfest. The first is the alternative of prohibiting ATVs on the site. That's kind of fatal to the event. It's a big grounds. Part of the event is driving 4-wheelers on established trails. If those are eliminated, I mean, it's kind of like prohibiting drummers from being at a music fest. It's just an integral part of that event. Those ATVs get shut off at 8 o'clock. The vast majority of the minor consumptions are occurring after 8. So don't really see the connection to minor consumption concerns with the ATVs since they're off at 8. The other alternative proposed by the sheriff was essentially prohibiting anybody from attending the event who is under 21. Later, he offered that folks under 21 would have to leave the grounds at 8:30. There's concerns, a couple of concerns with that. So first and foremost, this is a family event. Folks bring their little kids, they bring their teenagers. This is an atmosphere, a family atmosphere that they want to continue to foster. If there is, a condition that folks under 21 are not on the grounds, it sends kind of an unwritten message that it's about drinking and partying, and that is not the message that Mudfest wants to convey to attendees. If folks have to take their underage children off of the grounds at 8:30, we're concerned that this is going to raise a bunch of unintended consequences. You're going to have folks, now it's dark, leaving the grounds. If mom or dad has had a beer or two, we don't want them leaving and going onto public roadways. It's also going to create kind of a crush at the gate each morning that's going to impair traffic concerns. So was submitted to you yesterday, kind of a supplement. So there are a number of things that Mudfest is proposing that we didn't really talk about last time. So first is Mudfest will be issuing numbered wristbands. These are standalone wristbands in addition to the other wristbands that they provide to patrons. And once wristband number 3,000 is sold, no more entrance for any patrons. There was some concern expressed about staff and tracking that. So Mudfest proposed to issue staff wristbands to all staff members. Those would also be numbered so that we could provide some information for how many staff folks are on the grounds as well. They're also proposing to say no unaccompanied minors. So if there's somebody under the age of 18, they don't get on the grounds unless they've got a parent or guardian with them. One additional item that Mudfest is proposing that we think gets at the underage consumption is that anybody between the ages of 18 and 21 who is entering the grounds, they would not be allowed entry until they provide an opportunity for security, and if the sheriff wishes to participate, that they wouldn't be allowed to enter until their vehicle and coolers were searched to make sure that those folks are not bringing alcohol that they're not allowed to have onto the grounds. There are in the security plan, specific personnel designated to each component of the campground. We're open to requiring security to make a more affirmative effort to not just walk the roads to the campgrounds, but actually engage with folks at the campsites to make sure that there's not minor consumption going on as part of that. Proposing to add additional signage at the entry points and throughout the event, as well as any publication or marketing materials that minor age consumption has zero tolerance and will be strictly enforced, and referrals made to law enforcement. There's some concern that so there's a family campground with limited hours for noise, and then the rest of the campground, Mudfest is proposing to add additional lighting to help with security concerns in the non-family areas. And then they've provided some clarification on the days of the event. So no actual event happens until Friday. They do allow folks to come and, set up their campground in advance to help alleviate some of the traffic concerns that have been present on that opening day previously. So provided that clarity as well. I don't know if there's other things you guys want to add, or?
No, you kind of hit everything to the point there for our newer ideas that we had came up with there, so.
Anything else? All right, if you gentlemen want to take a seat again, like I said, I'll be letting you come up again if you want to have another question or after we have comments, public comments. Sheriff's Department, please.
Is this on? Can you hear me?
I can hear. I don't know if they can.
Okay. So kind of just what they stated, the Mudfest personnel, we did meet, it was in March, I think it was the 28th. And we had a conversation, probably a meeting of hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. At the end of the day, like they mentioned, they stated that they would be willing to have the minors accompanied by basically a parent or a guardian. I told them at that point I didn't feel right about that. There's a couple of reasons. Number one, how do you prove that somebody's a parent? Outside of making them bring their birth certificate, I think it's kind of impossible to figure out who a parent is and who a guardian is. And of course, there's different definitions that we can place as far as a guardian. So, right now we can't determine parents at the U.S. border. How are we going to figure out who the parents are at Mudfest? And that's kind of where I stand on that. And so we talked about it, and I came back with a counter proposal. And I said, here's the deal, kind of like Mr. Ripple mentioned. I'm okay if all minors attend this event. They can go from the beginning of the event, and they can hit every single event, including the ATVs, and then park the ATVs like everyone else at 8 o'clock at night. And then let's give them 30 minutes, pretty reasonable time, to leave the grounds. Because like they mentioned, after 8 o'clock, that's where all these incidents are starting. The drinking, the disorderly, and we have proof that's in our statistics. So I think we both agree to that. The only disagreement is that they want these people to spend the night on the campgrounds, and I'm not willing to do that based off the history of this event. So that's kind of where we're at. I also wanted to kind of put everything into light as far as, what do other community events do? And what are the numbers there, and what are we looking at for underage consumption? So basically, if you remember, we had 76 minors at Mudfest Memorial Weekend. 2018. 12 of those were age 17 or younger. 64 of those minors were ages 18 to 20 that were cited for minor consumption. Freedom Fest last year, 2018, there were 0 citations for underage consumption. Bolus Days, there was 1 citation for underage consumption. I get it, it's a one-day event. Swanville Carnival is a 3-day event. There was 4 citations for underage consumption. Swanville didn't have anything last year, but in 2017, they had Little Texas play. They had 3,500 people who attended. This was at Red's Irish Pub, which is now called Lucky's because of the transfer of ownership. They had 0 incidents, 0 minor consumptions. Plus, we had more law enforcement personnel on the grounds. So looking at all this, trying to figure out, you know, my whole deal is I'm the chief law enforcement officer of Morrison County, and I need to review all the statistics, look at where the issues are, and address them. That's obviously what I need to do. So if we can get a handle on the event, I'm willing to negotiate that. But that's my stance right now, was my offer that I gave to Mudfest personnel, is that I'll allow all minors, but they just have to be off the grounds by 8:30 p.m. each day. I think the rest we pretty much agree on, with the exception of the minors being accompanied. So I think the way they're moving forward is, you know, they want to have the ATVs, but I'm also allowing them to have the minors, which there's give and take, and I gave them that. But the exception is I want them off the grounds by 8:30 at night. And I think we went into my reasoning last time, but if I need to go back into that reasoning, I'm prepared to do so.
Thank you. Anything else? At this time, I'll open it up for public comment. I'll ask the public 3 times. You'll have 3 minutes to give your comment. Again, I'm asking that you address the board only, not the sheriff's department. This will be a comment, not a question. If you do have a question, we're not going to be answering it at that time. We'll take a note of it, and then hopefully we can address your question after the public comment. So at this time, I will ask for any public comment. And then please come to the podium, state your name.
Ron Wrinkle, and I happen to be the owner along with my wife, Mary Ann. We've owned this property for just about 50 years. And when we started with Mudfest was probably about 20 years ago, and why we started was we had people coming in here, and it was strictly a family event, and that's what we want today yet. And it reminds me of some of the comments that were made. It reminds me of a few years ago when we had a lot more people than the place could hold. And Rosie and I decided together that we should close it down, and we did close it down. And when we were on the road there's a person coming there, and he's got 2 little kids. They're probably 8 and 10 years old, and they're crying to Mommy and Daddy because they can't get in there, and Mommy and Daddy, you promised me that we were going to be able to camp out. And we said no. That's the human side of things, and we get to deal with that. This 8 o'clock closing is absolutely implausible in my mind as a grandparent and a parent, because this is a family event, and they come there around the campground, and they've got a little kid there, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14, 18 years old, and we can't kick them out onto the general public street, and this isn't the idea of the campground to start with. I think that's probably my 3 minutes, but thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions? Please come up to the podium, state your name.
Yes, my name is Jim Brown, and I belong to the American Legion, and I'm in support of the Mudfest because all the money that is made, we work at the food stand there, all the Legion members, and that's all volunteer help, and that's our main money support for the year is what we make off the food at the Legion. So I know you guys have issues to deal with. I hope you get it resolved. But that's our main fundraiser for the Legion, Human Legion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions? Again, that'll be my first time. I'll ask for a second time. Any comments or questions? And this will be my, oh, there we go.
Good morning. I'm Lloyd Wrinkle. I live at 11004 398th Avenue, Hillman, which according to this map is the green little triangle on here. Mudfest is literally in my backyard. It's been going on over 20 years, and in all that time, nobody's ever asked me what I thought of it from the county. My father did once when it first started up, but I'm for it because I'm one of the co-managers of the Hillman American Legion food shack there. And contrary to whatever seems to get always reported in the Morrison County Record, the Hillman American Legion only operates a 20 by 30 foot tin shed, and we sell hamburgers and a lot of times ask if they want fries with that. I'm sorry, I might go just slightly over to 3 minutes. I'll try to be brief. But I'm an avionics technician at the St. Cloud Airport. I got 23 years of military experience. I volunteered twice to go to Afghanistan through Andrews Air Force Base. And the reason I'm here is not because my last name is Wrinkle, is because I'm a concerned citizen about what I see going on here, the duality of things. I guess let's get real. And get into the facts of a few things. Actions have consequences. Like Mr. Wrinkle had said, a few years ago, the council here, or the commissioners, put a cap on a number of people allowed in. So at that number, when they figured they had it, they closed the gate. That's on the map here. You can see where it is, 1 mile off the main highway. And at the intersection that is circled there is where people had to turn around. At that intersection is kind of the limit point. Rosie, who operates our ticket booth, does not allow the traffic to get to that point. She always keeps it before that. When that booth was closed, the traffic was backed up all the way onto Sage Avenue there, or County Road 33. And all these people are upset. They've driven for hours to get there, like Mr. Wrinkle said. Well, what the deputies did is diverted down the gravel road south, right past Gary Gutwald's place. Once again, he's complaining about the dust. That's true. That's something that the commissioners did, and that was the reaction from it. Moving on here, well, I was just going to say, then you had all these people out in the community. They're upset. They've driven for hours. They can't get in, and they're angry. They're out in our community driving around. Got no place to go. That's the same thing. What's this love affair with event numbers? I could see having a daily event limit. It's like a number on the side of a building. So many people are all allowed into a room. Definitely. Why a whole entire event limit? These are all rhetorical questions. Answer them yourselves. I'd say set a daily limit, run with it. Next is security. I understand from the last meeting, there are 73 events that happened. Of the supposedly 2,500 people Wrinkle said there, that's a 3% action. If it's the 3,500 that I've heard the sheriff mention, that's 1.7%. I'd say security specialists are doing their job. Considering these people are coming off the urban jungle that we call it, they're getting on the gravel, and they think the rules don't apply. And we have to repeatedly show them that they do. Work in military security, I was always taught you separate people from a group. You do not let a group gathered. And I know the deputies probably have the same training. They earn every penny they get paid on a daily basis. But you need somebody who deals with groups. In my opinion, you need somebody that's a licensed person who is usually willing to be around crowds. That, to me, is security people like in prisons. And you need somebody with experience at large events like We Fest, all the other music festivals. That happens to be security specialists. They are the right tool for the job. They have the experience in dealing with crowds.
All right, I let you go over a little bit, so I thank you for your comments.
Okay, I have more, but I'll let it go.
All right, I'll ask again. This will be the first time. Anybody have any questions or comments? Please come to the podium and state your name.
My name is Sandra Holman. I'm from Hillman area. I'm going to pick up where he left off. He was commenting about We Fest. I don't know if any of the commissioners have gone to We Fest, but this looks like a birthday party in comparison to We Fest. What they do is they deal with it. There is a lot of underage drinking that happens, and they deal with it. They get the right security in, and they keep going forward. I've gone to Lake Fest. I've witnessed the same thing up there. There is some underage drinking goes on. They try to deal with it. We cannot say that Freedom Fest has no drinking. You maybe didn't arrest anybody, but believe me, it's there. But it is a one-night event also, and some of the others that you compared to. This is America. I don't think that we can just keep putting the screws on until we make this event go away. That is totally not what we should be about. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? Please come to the podium and state your name.
Yes, my name is Scott Zopfe, and I'm here on behalf of Mudfest and having juveniles at the event. We have a lot of younger kids that are in our group that look forward to Mudfest, like a spring rite, and I think it would be wrong if we eliminated these children from participating in at this event, especially overnight when you have your camping and fellowship times after dark. I think it's important that they have a chance to stay there. And maybe just controlling and paying attention to what these middle, young, older adolescents are doing might be a more thoughtful approach to controlling the underage consumption. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions? This will be my first time.
Hi, I'm Randy Wrinkle at Hillman. I'd like to say is that Mudfest there after, as being someone underage yet, but after you get hyped up, run a four-wheeler all day long, and when you kick people out at 8:30 at night, instead of, we already got our alcohol, if you got alcohol, you already got it there, instead of staying at the campsite where there's security, where you stay controlled. Maybe you'll go out, maybe somebody will find somewhere out in the community to go party and make a mess somewhere else out and about, driving around the community. That's what my opinions are. It's better to keep them all controlled at an area like Mudfest where they're watched, instead of out ripping up somebody else's place. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask for more public comment. Anybody have any more public comment?
Morning, Commissioners. My name is John Ulrich. I live in Lakin Township. One comment I'd like to make, I understand the laws for underage drinking. I don't condone underage drinking. We've all done it at one time in our life or another. I raised 10 children, and we were pretty down on our kids about that kind of stuff. Excuse me. But I do want the board to know that I lost a daughter to a drunk driver 24 years ago. If these young people, I'm talking about 18 to 21, if you're old enough to go to war, you should be able to drink.
That's not the law. But here's the other thing. I'd rather have them all in one location rather than leaving with alcohol in their system and maybe costing somebody else their life. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions? That was my first time. I'll ask the second time. Any more comments or questions? And this will be my last time. Any more comments or questions? At this time, we'll close the public hearing. And at this time, I'd like to address our county attorney. We have 4 board members here, not 5. And I think I know the answer, but could you tell me how the Robert's rules would work if it ends up 3-1 or 2-2? If you could explain that to us, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So yes, we do just have the 4 board members today. So in order to pass this application, we need 3 votes in favor in order to go forward. A 2-2 vote would be a tie, and it wouldn't be passing with a tie. So we would need to go forward with a 3-1 vote or 4-0 vote in order to pass the application. So, Mr. Chair, may I summarize where we're at? So the decision to grant or deny this application or this license shall be based upon the application itself and any attachments, oral testimony that you've heard, and other written documentation that was presented to the board by the applicant or other interested parties. Now, this matter was continued from the previous board meeting, so the board should not only consider what was seen and heard today, but also at the previous board meeting as well. It's all part of the same record. And so we have before us an application from Mudfest dated March 8th, 2019. That's the primary application. An addendum or a supplement was submitted yesterday with a number of proposed changes. I would assume any changes would supersede the original application, so that's kind of where we're at. There is also a written explanation submitted on Friday from the applicants as well. And that's the submissions that the board should be basing its decision on this morning.
If I may, Brian, the application that was submitted yesterday, that kind of breakdown of why they agree or disagree, is that part of the application? Will that be part of our decision making?
I think it should be. I think it was submitted in a timely enough manner for the board to consider it. I would note that there does not appear to be an agreement on the security plan. Right. There is not an approved security plan from the sheriff, and so it's not mentioned anywhere, I believe, in the original application or the addendum submitted yesterday, but it's clear that the applicants are requesting a variance from the sheriff's security plan, since apparently the sheriff has not approved what they are recommending. And so the board would need to consider a variance in order to approve their application. And just, if I may, Mr. Chair, go over the requirements for a variance.
Thank you.
From our ordinance. The board may consider requests for variances from any of the requirements of the ordinance when an applicant can show that strict compliance with the ordinance would cause exceptional and undue hardship by reason of the special nature of the proposed assembly, or by reason of the fact that the circumstances make the requirements of the ordinance unnecessary, provided that such variance may be granted without detriment to the public health, safety, or welfare, and without impairing the intent and purpose of the ordinance. So that's the basis for making your decision this morning.
Anything else, Brian?
Not for me right now.
And
Thank
then,
you.
gentlemen, I will ask for a motion and a second. That does not mean that you're for or against. This means that we would we'd have more discussions if we have any questions or comments to either the applicant only or the sheriff's department only.
So move, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Now for any questions or comments that you may have.
Mr. Chair, if I may. You had clarification from the county attorney on the vote on this permit. If the vote by, excuse me, Mr. Chair. If this permit application would not be passed today, procedurally, could the applicant return to this board and reapply?
That'd be a question for our county attorney.
I believe they could. I believe they could.
Okay.
Sure.
Commissioner Wilson? Oh, I also, before we go on, when we ask for the vote, I'll ask for an explanation why the board, the commissioner states why they're going to vote yes or no. That would be helpful to you, Brian?
Yes, I would recommend that.
All right. Commissioner Wilson, do you have a comment or question?
Well, I'm sure I do. First of all, when I get all my facts and I read all this information, I really try to deal with what I know and what I feel is facts and what can be handled, I guess I want to say, out at an event. But first of all, I want to clarify a couple statements. Number one, that Mudfest shut down that event that year when it was big. I think that if the direction wasn't to shut it down, you'd allowed people to keep coming in that were parked on the road. That's my perception, so I'm just trying to clarify that. And then when the sheriff talked about minors drinking at these other events, the difference I want to think is, first of all, at Mudfest, beer is not sold. At Piers Fest and these other events, beer was sold in the grounds. People had wristbands on that were 21, that weren't, under 21, so they weren't allowed to buy beer. If Mudfest would sell beer and worked under that same ordinance there where nobody could bring beer on the grounds, I think that'd be a lot easier to handle. Another thing that I don't quite agree with, I'm just trying to clarify how I'm thinking about these different things that are being talked about. I don't approve at all that we keep under 21s at Mudfest so that if they're drinking, they stay there. Because the goal is that they're not drinking, and that's what we have to work on. So I don't agree with any of that. But I've seen this event. I've been out at this event. I've run these events. And I think that what we need to address here is the drinking. And I think that what you've presented to me about the minors being with parents, checking their coolers, I think that's a step forward to try to figure out how to deal with this, because this is not easy to deal with. When we talk about no minors on grounds, I do look at the people that come with kids that are 10, 12 years old that are camping out there for the weekend, 16 years old. I don't think that's fair to ask them to leave because we have a minor child. And that's kind of where I stand on that. I know this is a tough situation for the sheriff's department, for security, but I just think it's one of these events that we need to work together to try to keep enforcing these rules about minors drinking, because I'm not in favor of minors drinking. I'm not in favor of drugs out there. I'm not in favor of anything else that goes on out there that's illegal. But it brings a lot to our community. As Jim had said, the Legion, it's their fundraiser. If you go into Little Falls, you go to Piers, you go to the restaurants and the bars that weekend, there's an awful lot of vehicles that are filled up with fuel and stop at these stations and do a lot for our businesses. I don't know of how many times we try to encourage an event not to have people there. That's why we try to draw people there. But I do think, taking away ATVs, I don't see how you can take away the main attraction of an event. I don't know, I could go on all day long. The one thing that I haven't addressed here yet, and I'd like to address, the seal the dust situation. I guess I would like, I don't know if this is a stipulation or what, but I want you to do everything possible to keep the dust down, not right in front of their houses, but on those roads, because when the dust is in the air, it's hard for people to see. It's hard on the people living there, and I think that's another safety issue. So I might have more to say after people are talking, but I guess I've tried to lay out why I think the way I think, and I have to justify to the public when I make a vote. I have to tell you why I'm doing what I'm doing. I support the police. I support Wrinkles. I just think that it's one of those events that just takes a lot of work. So, I don't know.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson.
I just have a question, and maybe you could address. What do you consider a minor?
Well, for purposes of drinking, it's anybody who has not yet reached the age of 21 is a minor for purposes of the alcohol.
So will they be under 21, will be required to be within a guardian or a parent?
That's not what they've proposed. They've proposed anyone under the age of 18 be in attendance with a parent or an adult. You know, after they're 18, they're a legal adult for just about all purposes except buying a handgun and drinking a beer.
No, I understand that. Another question, on your previous permit, you have a total amount on grounds at 3,500, 2,600 camping passes, 900 spectator passes. On this, on your amendment, there's 3,000, so is that the maximum, your maximum tickets sold, there's gonna be 3,000, and maximum allowed at one time is 3,000? And what was it last year, 2,600?
It was 26. The daily limit was different than the number of tickets sold.
Yes, the 3,000 was the max ticket sold and
Correct.
2,600 was the daily limit. What we kind of spoke about, Adam, and maybe that's something we can talk about, was 3,000 tickets sold, but 2,600 overnight is what we talked about. But is that what you mean by this or not?
Well, I guess when we had the discussion last week, we talked about the difficulty of checking people that leave. You can't pull their wristband because we're using that for numbering, and correct me if I'm wrong, I was under the understanding that if we're providing that, you know, to the number wristband, that the daily limit was less of a concern.
Okay.
But if that's not correct, let me know.
I was just clarifying that to make sure we're on the same page with that.
I do have,
Good point.
Mr. Chair, if I can ask for.
Please do.
I believe your ordinance has a 60-day application period, so I'm a little confused on the statement that we could reapply if there's a denial today, because I think we're outside of that window.
Brian, could you address that?
I don't have a copy of the ordinance on me, but.
If you can.
Right. From my perspective, this is the same application, so even if it was denied and we brought it back at another time, the application was submitted back in March already.
So if I clarify, Brian, that means that they submitted in time in March. There might have been some amendments and whatever, but the true time was based on March. Is that correct, when it was submitted?
That's the view I'm taking.
Okay. Does that answer your question, hopefully?
Sure. And just to speak to Commissioner Wilson's comment, the statement about not wanting minors to leave, it's in no way condoning underage consumption. It's just an exception. I mean, accepting the reality that we could have 1,000 law enforcement officers and there's still likely the potential for underage consumption. And again, we're going to do everything we can to prevent that, but the reality is we're not going to be able to 100% stop it.
Gentlemen, any more comments or questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Lemire.
I believe there was some communication downfall between the security specialists and the sheriff's department last year in regards to the minors that were consuming. Is there going to be an effort put forth for the security specialists to do better communicating with the sheriff's department?
Yeah, so we attempted to address that in the supplemental information about more directed patrols, not just on the roads through the campgrounds, but actually engaging folks at their campsite, you know, as the deputies did last year.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Wilson.
You know, that kind of brings up another question. You know, there were some rules that weren't followed last year that were pretty simple, I think, from the application that was presented. It was like, let me see, which one was this? Where, lost my train of thought.
How about you think?
Go to somebody else and I'll come back to it and write it down.
I have a few questions, but if I may, I think I'm going to probably address this to the applicant and the sheriff's department. We had 76 minors for, I'm assuming that was alcohol consumption, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so out of those 76 minors, I'm assuming there's probably a few that got away. It was last week, the disrespect that the sheriff's department gets when they're walking the grounds by people there in the public, that maybe the security specialists, again, and the applicants or the sheriff's department aren't working. That's a big concern of mine. You also brought up that there's a personal space with, you would allow the sheriffs or the security people did not go into the campgrounds. Well, it seems like there's a lot of that going on there, and I'm addressing the security, is that will you start going into these campgrounds? Because again, if you have minors drinking or whatever, what is your plan of action that if you see a minor drinking, or assume it's a minor drinking, are you going to bring the sheriff's department in, or are you just going to give them a slap on the hand? Or if they do get a minor, what happens to them? I know the question, but I'd like to have the sheriff's department comment on that also. So I threw a lot out there for now. Could you comment on the in the campgrounds what the security is going to be doing?
Again, not just patrolling the roads, but engaging with folks at their campsite. There's zero tolerance for underage consumption. It's a referral to law enforcement. To the extent that patrons are disrespectful, I mean, that's not an attitude that Mudfest tolerates or supports, and we're open to, kicking those folks out. It is a private event that Mudfest does have the ability to remove those folks, and I don't think there's anything other than respect for law enforcement and what they do, and they're a key part to be able to put this event on. Mudfest is not looking to have them be verbally and certainly not physically abused by people on the grounds, and they're open to kicking folks out.
And the sheriffs could comment, if the security specialists apprehend a minor, what happens for legal? If you don't, as a police officer or sheriff's department does not see him, but the security specialists, do they bring him to you? What happens once they are ticketed or out, whatever? How could you explain that for me, please?
Mr. Chair, what I do every year is I sit and I listen to what their plan of attack is, and then I either have to agree or disagree. Every year, it's always, we're going to do this, this, and this, and then I have to analyze it afterwards and figure out, was this and this done? Well, last year, like any other year, the safety plan, the first two paragraphs, it states, on-ground security is handled by security specialists in Morrison County Sheriff's Office who are responsible for maintaining everyone's safety and eliminate minor consumption of alcohol. If anyone 20 years old or younger is observed drinking alcohol, they will be turned over to law enforcement. Zero tolerance. This plan hasn't changed. This has been the same for years. Of course, analyzing it, talking to all our deputies on staff, how many minors were brought to our attention, turned over to law enforcement? It was zero. So the plan is right there that if security sees somebody that has the underage bracelet on, wristband, with alcohol, they're supposed to grab them, either escort them to us or get a hold of us by other means, and we will take care of it. And at that point, if they're 17 or younger, they're going to have to leave the grounds. A parent will have to come and get them, or a legal guardian. And if they're 18 or older, they'll be cited with a citation. And the younger ones, of course, will do a report, send up to the county attorney's office, and they'll get charged by long form.
To answer the question again, of the 70-some minors that were, so that was security specialists who gave them a minor consumption or whatever? It was you guys, right?
That was all the sheriff's office, correct.
Okay, so those were turned over to you. Is that what you're, because you
No,
said?
those 76 subjects who were cited for underage consumption
Yeah.
were all caught by law enforcement,
That's what I
licensed peace
wanted you
officers.
to. So if a security specialist catches someone, what do you guys do with them? Apparently, the sheriff's department is the one that's doing all the enforcing there. You have 70-some minors that were citation by the deputy sheriffs. It really bothers me that the security, you can, I mean, what are you guys doing? I mean, it's a promises broken.
As for security and the deputies working on the grounds, as of last Memorial 2018, they were working together. And if you would have asked Monday after the event and things like that on how things are, we're constantly asking deputy things throughout the event and how things are being handled, and everything was being handled in this way. Now, the security specialists have written documentation that they turned over a certain individual that was under 21 to the deputies? No, there is no proof that that was done. We don't have that. I mean, so were they doing their jobs, doing what was required and things like that? It's like when we're asking throughout the event and what we can do, if there's anything else, nope, things are looking good, campgrounds, parking, so yeah, we had the minors and things like that, but as I believe now, 2018 was probably the most citations ever written for Mudfest.
If you can address the board, please.
For Mudfest. And now, with that being said, does that mean that Mudfest was the worst ever in 2018? No, that does not mean that at all, because things have improved and done every year. So when it comes down to that, I mean, security and the deputies, in my eyes, right after the event, they did well last year. They did a great job by, when they caught somebody under the age, that was it. They were up to the front gate, parents were called, it was handled the way it was supposed to be handled on Memorial Day of 2018. Yes, there was a lot caught, which is good, but that's part of handling and enforcing the law of it all.
So you don't keep records of someone that you ask, a minor, again, even though it states that they're supposed to be turned over to the deputy sheriff or the sheriff's department, you just kind of give them to the parents or you escort them off and you don't listen to what the, you don't abide by our conditions, as they say out
Well,
there.
it's not by abiding it, but if you were to catch an individual and the deputies were there right next to you, there you know.
But if they're, let's say, 100 feet away or half of whatever, then you just escort them off? You don't look at it and say, let's go find a deputy sheriff?
No, that's not, that's not the case on how things will be handled or whatever else like that. So it's not that you just, but you're working together out there. So now do we need to document if we turn an individual over to the deputies? So.
Sheriff, could you read that one more time, please? What you're supposed to do if the security specialists, and this has been, like, how many years this has been in the ordinance, or there probably many years?
Since I started.
Okay, so if you could read that one more time, please.
The safety plan, and it indicates in the following first two paragraphs the following. On-ground security is handled by security specialists, Morrison County Sheriff's Office, who are responsible for maintaining everyone's safety and eliminate minor consumption of alcohol. If anyone 20 years old or younger is observed drinking alcohol, they will be turned over to law enforcement. There is a zero tolerance.
Thank you. Gentlemen, any more questions or comments?
Well, I think Jake's question to that is, do you want that documented, that I turned somebody over to the sheriff?
If I can, Mr. Chair?
Yeah,
I think it is documented. I reached out to all our deputies who worked the event. I asked them if any minors were turned over to our licensed deputies, and the response was no. They came across all the minors themselves, and they processed the minors accordingly. One other thing, if I can, just wanted to address, so the Wrinkles, they ended up giving us this email yesterday, and I think it's the Mudfest supplement, they call it. And then number 3, I just read this, no accompanied minors. It says no minors will be allowed under the entry of the grounds unless accompanied by a parent or guardian. Mudfest is truly a family event. The television show Northwoods Adventure did a story on Mudfest last year, which can be viewed at, and it gives a YouTube address. So I did plug that address in, and I reviewed this for myself. And what I saw was, I'm going to assume they're a married couple. It was a male and female, maybe in their mid-20s. I'm just guessing. It could be off on the age, maybe later 20s, early 30s. And they each had a toddler in their hand. And they were being interviewed by Lakeland News. And they said that they attend the Labor Day event because the memorial event is more of the party crowd. So, I mean, what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, and my dad is telling me, is that, you know, this is more of a party crowd. It's more people. It's more of the party atmosphere. So what am I doing to try and address these issues? I think every year, if we just say, well, don't do this and don't let this happen again, because that's kind of what I'm hearing every year. And I've heard it stated by a few other people. It's like, accept the reality. Actions have consequences. We need to get control of the event. And the list goes on. It's like, well, what are we doing to address this? You know, I don't think we're doing anything outside of lip service. So I think it needs to be addressed. I think everyone needs to know that we are serious about this. And we need to prove that we're willing to accept the fact that change needs to be made. And we need to put our foot down, because otherwise this is going to continue. And if someone seriously gets hurt or killed, I don't want them coming back to me saying, you know what, Sheriff, you could have prevented this. That's all I have.
Thank you. Gentlemen, any more comments or questions? Commissioner Blaine? I'll give you more than 3 minutes.
I'll try and be brief. Good morning to the Wrinkles and to Adam and you know, first preface this by saying I've always in my inaugural year of addressing your permit, I've always tried to take a proactive approach to try and help you guys be able to continue your event, and especially because of what you do as far as sharing with the Legion, and that there are good things that can come from this outside of people just having fun in the mud. So the one thing, I guess I'll preface this, the one thing I didn't want to do is get into helping or having the permit process constructed in this venue. And that's why I think I said at the last meeting and maybe the meeting in March, you know, my suggestion to use was to get together with those departments of the county that have jurisdiction here, or input on this, to get together and have a working agreement that so that when it got to this point and when it got to this table, we could look at this and we could go up or down or yes or no on things. But being it is what it is at this point, I'm going to go back to a couple of things that have kind of come to light through the application and through your addition and that, and we'll go from there. But so you know, I'll ask you. You feel you have a working agreement or a working permit that's acceptable to public health, to county public health?
I believe so.
We do.
We do.
Okay, and also the county auditor is here, and so I have to assume that the permit that what is stated on the permit meets the requirements under the view of the county auditor. Would that be correct?
I think we just need a timeline of dates and hours specified, and I've addressed that before, just to have a timeline. I know that it says here the grounds will be open on Wednesday, the 22nd at 8 a.m. to allow patrons to bring campers and mud trucks, and then the event would start Friday. We just need exact dates and times laid out.
Okay, that can be provided, cleaned up, correct?
Yep.
So then it comes to this, the point with public safety in the sheriff's department. So where we're at right now this morning is, we don't have a working agreement with public safety at this point in time.
That would be a question for Brian.
Or first, I want to ask I'd like to ask those seeking the permit.
The applicant, sure.
I think the sole item in contest is the question of the presence of minors after 8 p.m. or 8:30 p.m. I think that is the only thing that's not resolved in our mind.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, thank you, Sheriff. Under your, auspice with this situation, would that be correct? What the wrinkles has stated, that's where we got the rub right now, is the minors.
Correct. If I may, I just, to reiterate, initially, this got brought up towards the tail end of our first meeting. I gave my input as far as not being comfortable with the minors being accompanied by a parent and/or guardian. But since then, our last meeting, which was March 28th, I did counter. I made a counter offer to him stating that, again, that I would allow minors this time, which wasn't my stance a couple of weeks ago. But I looked at it and let's let them have fun. Bring all the minors in, no matter what age group. Let them participate in all the events. But at 8 o'clock when the ATV shut down, then that's where everyone agrees we're having the problems after 8 p.m. Give them 30 minutes, so at 8:30 to get off the grounds. And then they could treat it as like a daily event where they could be allowed back.
Okay. And so I understand, the position that way from public safety, because, and I didn't just crawl out of under a rock here. I realized that when it gets dark is when there will be, that's when things seem to go awry. I also understand from the Wrinkles' perspective how logistically that could be very challenging to have to exit however many minors this would be, and or how this would get done, or how this would affect the whole event of being able to have a family event but not have the children there in the evening, or overnight, and logistically how you do that. And I don't have the answer to that. And I don't want to be looked at to have the answer for that today. That's why I didn't want to get into this, but we're going to get into it. So So that was one of the things that I was hoping that we wouldn't be talking about, because this would have been, we'd have the answer before we got to this point. So the other, I have 3 other comments on this. When I look through the supplement on this, and this is just, and I'm not trying to be nitpicky or anything like that, but I'm, you know, in an effort to help both sides deal with the underage drinking, because that seems to be the stake in the ground that everybody's trying to pull out. To me, the first thing on the thing here, so we're looking at every patron will be given a numbered wristband. I'm looking at this sheet here.
It's up on the screen. That same one.
Okay. So we have 3,000 wristbands. So everybody that comes in would get a wristband. If they're 6 years old, they get a wristband. If they're 26 years old or 86 years old, everybody's going to get a wristband. So if we're kind of trying to target some focus on underage drinking and those people out there, do we have another wristband that IDs minors? Okay, it's not listed on here, but thank you for, Jake, go ahead and help me out.
Last time was brought up, was to have a separate wristband on top of what we had, because we will have a weekend event wristband for adults. We will have a weekend event for under 21.
Okay.
And then when Saturday comes, you will have an additional wristband. If you come for just the day, that's a different color. That lets you know that you're there just for the day. And that will also be an adult or minor. So this 3,000, that's going to be a separate wristband that's going to be tagged on. So most people will have 2 wristbands on when you see them on the grounds. They'll have their number one and the separate one. That's how we know when you're walking around the grounds whether or not they're underage or not, is because we take care of that up at the front gate, and you're able to see that.
Okay, and that was my concern. So if you're, you know, we're putting a lot of onus on security specialists to help address this underage drinking issue, correct?
Yep.
That's why they're there.
Yep.
I mean, besides all the other stuff, okay? But, so they have to be able to readily, easily be able to identify who's someone who's 19 who looks like he could be 26.
Yep.
You know, or someone like me who was 26 and still looks like he's 12.
And that's why in that sheet here that you see too, that we said that we'd also provide more lighting down in our south camps, because we have a family camping section that there's no noise after 11 p.m. So we tend to have less issues, over there. So, and it's more of that younger crowd that's went down that direction. So, and as I know the deputies and stuff like that, I'm sure that most of their citations and stuff were written down there. That's why we promoted to maybe we can help with some lighting and we can address those issues, since it is from 8 to 11 and it's dark, and, to try to help with this scenario. So that's why that additional idea that we had came up with to help on this situation.
Okay. When neighbors were here and spoke publicly the last time we met, and this dust control issue came up, and one of the other commissioners here had mentioned that too, and I had talked with yous personally about that, and I think I put on record when we met the last time too that this, to me, this was like a no-brainer, that that the road would be chlorided, and we're not going to talk about dust anymore. And I realize that some people, out in the neighborhood may not want calcium chloride on the road. Well, there'll have to be some give and take on things there. I didn't see that addressed anywhere in here, and so that
that's something that has, in my mind, has to be, and it isn't. I'm gonna, out of all this conversation, these thoughts keep coming up or the discussion spawns other thoughts out here, and we gave the sheriff gives the example of other large assemblies in the county, and we don't have the same numbers of incidents at those events, and it was said that at those events, alcohol is sold. So I guess my question is, has that conversation ever taken place in this whole process? And this, once again, I don't want to get into saying this is how this event should be run or how you guys should do things or whatever like that, but to look at the possibility of alcohol being sold rather than people being able to bring in all the alcohol they want or feel they need for an event. And we don't have to get into that discussion now, but that was one of those ones I hope has been explored in the past. I was hoping that we would have all the I was hoping we'd have all the wrinkles out of the pants before we tried to hang them on the hanger here today. So, Mr. Chair, that's the extent of what I can throw out there right now.
Okay. I guess what I'm going to ask is if the applicant would like to make one more comment on this before we take a vote.
One more thing I'd like to address too is a lot of our, it sounds easy for underage individual to leave at 8:30 at night if they're 10 minutes down the road. A lot of our clientels and people that come to Mudfest come from over an hour away. I got people coming from Colorado. I got people coming from Michigan. I got people, so it changes that whole aspect. So it's a different scenario when it's a festival just in your town for a night or something like that. So we got people camping for the weekend. So I wanted to bring that issue back up too. So when you guys make your decision.
Thank you. Does the Sheriff's Department have any last thing to say before we take a vote?
Not really, unless there needs to be any clarification. I mean, I read through this and there's questions referring to their supplement number 4. If you look, it's titled Search Vehicles Coolers of Those Under 21. Individuals between the age of 18 and 21 will not be allowed entry on the grounds unless they allow the search of their vehicle and coolers to ensure that they're not bringing alcohol into the event. Staff will be responsible for this, but will cooperate with the Sheriff's Office to the extent deputies wish to participate. So, I think it's a great deterrent, and it probably should be done. But then, what are we going to do? I mean, there's so many. It's kind of like, do we want to talk about this for 20 minutes? If there is alcohol, the subject is 18, 19, 20 years old. What are we going to do? Who's going to take the alcohol? The things that just came across here yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to reach out to them, and we've been going back and forth, and I get that, but there's certainly some issues that we may not be comfortable with at this point regarding that, and who's going to take ownership, who's going to get involved, and et cetera.
All right, gentlemen, I have a motion and a second.
Mr. Chair, can I ask Brian a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Is there any clarification needed on, Commissioner Wilson talked a little bit about dust. The condition that was placed last year differs a little bit, or it's above and beyond what was in the application this year. Are we just addressing right now, the motion on the table is just what was submitted, correct? Without deviation from what was submitted is what I'm understanding. I'm just wanting to make sure we're recording this properly in the minutes.
Right, so the motion, as I understand it, was the application submitted in March with the addendum submitted yesterday. And although it's not stated specifically in either document that they are requesting a variance from the security plan as they laid out in their documents. I believe that's my understanding of what.
Okay. All right. Not deviating at any point from this based upon discussion that you've had?
I haven't heard any
Okay.
changes.
Okay. Thank you.
And a motion and a second. Any more discussion, gentlemen, before we take this vote? Again, I'll ask each individual to go with yay or nay with an explanation of why they're going. I will start with Commissioner Wilson.
Well, I'm in support of this event. I'll vote yes or whatever. I don't like going against the sheriff's recommendations, but I also see that the recommendations that were provided also create a lot of other problems. But knowing that alcohol to minors is what we're really trying to address here, I think it needs to be stressed that we do the best job possible to address this. So.
Thank you.
I can go on and on, but.
Commissioner Blaine.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to have to vote no because for me, I wanted to have a complete application where there was a working agreement with the Sheriff's Department, and I'm hoping that somehow there can be further discussion about somehow addressing the biggest problem, because if we just, I can't just, hope isn't a good way to govern. I can't just hope that things will be better. So either we're going to have to do some things and work with parties to do some things to have better assurance. The public safety part of this seems to be that biggest stickler or controlling point. Some of the other issues that I had brought up, I think it could be added as conditions, but this was the part that I wanted to have done when it got here. And obviously there's for me there would have to be more time taken by those parties involved to give me something that shows we're going to have a better attempt at public safety. So
thank you, Commissioner Blaine. Commissioner Lemire.
I'm going to be supporting this motion. Personal property issues. These individuals want to have an event on their property. They're trying to, granted in the past they haven't completely been able to give us accurate counts, but they're working on doing that with wristbands. They're going to be wristbanding their staff members. They're going to attempt to work on minor consumption. I'd prefer it if it was 20 and under, needed to be accompanied by a guardian, but I understand too that a minor is a minor and an adult is above 18 years old. But they're going to require minors to be accompanied by a guardian. I think, like Commissioner Wilson said, it would be too difficult to expect to get all those minors out of the facility within a half hour or even a couple hours. I hate going against the sheriff. I respect his opinion immensely, but I will be supporting this.
Well, we know where that leaves me. Before I tell you which way I plan on voting, I'm going to make my own comments and judgments of this. Again, we've been talking about this for years, longer than what some of the commissioners have been here, about it seems like Mudfest does what they want to do. A prime example is our sheriff brought up the security safety plan about minors, that, yep, they don't turn them over to the sheriff's department, and it's been in this ordinance for years. And again, that question hasn't, you pick and choose what you want to do on these ordinances. That really bothers me. The numbers was another one over the years that it seems like, okay, we had local residents stating that, you know what, there's 10,000, 20,000 people there, 5,000, whatever the number is, you never had a good count on what. Now you're making some effort here. I like this, that you're going to show where the sheriff's department at least can go in there and say how many are sold. I appreciate your effort there. The numbers game is a problem with me as far as, allowing so many people in there. But again, the sheriff's department is the one that has to make this decision, but I don't like putting that decision on there because, yeah, they're in charge of the safety and all that. Us as county commissioners are the ones that still have to make this final decision. I've warned you, and I've warned you that I've been for you guys. And a Legion comes up and says that they make all this money here for that. That's the only way they can do it. It's not the sheriff's department. It's not the county's department. You have to be held responsible for your own reactions here. So if this is approved or denied, it's not us board that are making that decision or the sheriff's department. It's you not following the rules that you're put out there for you. Again, the security says, well, no, we don't do it. You have no answer. You have no, well, why didn't we do it? Well, okay, we're supposed to do that. But anyway, you're going to be surprised at this. I'm going to give you one last chance. I'll vote yes on this, but I tell you what, you have all these minors, they better be turned over to the sheriff's department. If there's 1 or 100, I want documentation, and if it's not, I'll guarantee and I'll promise you, I will vote this down next year. Let's move on. Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair, if I can.
Yep.
I just want it on the record that obviously I do not approve their safety plan.
Yep.
Thank you.
Let's take 5. We are at public health report, and I believe I don't see anybody out there, but I see Deb.
I see you too. All right, today we have a 3 different food and beverage seasonal renewal licenses to get 4. I can count 4. 3 are the seasonal food and beverage, and the 4th is the mobile home food unit license. And they're presented.
I'll make the motion to approve, Chair.
I got a motion. I need a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
I should have said oppose. No discussion. I didn't ask for a discussion, so.
Oh, good.
All right.
Good.
All right, motion carried.
All right.
Anything else on the public health?
Not on public health, no.
Okay.
Amy.
So now we have someone else in the audience. Land Services.
Good morning.
Good morning, Amy. Are you by yourself today?
No, I brought a friend.
All right. Well, does a friend want to come up too?
She sure can.
All right.
All right, we've got 2 items for you. The first one is to consider the interim use permit request from Jason and Jacqueline Lashinsky. This is to establish an automotive repair shop. This was heard by the Planning Commission at their last meeting and recommended for approval with 5 conditions. Those 5 conditions are abide by all applicable state and local laws regarding automotive repair and proper disposal of fluids and wastes. Maintain records of disposal of automotive fluids and wastes and provide for review of records at the request of the Land Services Department. No outdoor storage of vehicles or vehicle components, except for the vehicles on site for service, shall be located on the property. A holding tank must be installed to collect the shop drain water by May 31st, 2019. The water from the holding tank must be properly disposed of according to MPCA requirements. And the interim use permit shall terminate when Jason Lashinsky no longer owns the property.
I'll ask for a motion.
Make that motion.
I need a second.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Not those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jean for some abatements.
All right. Morning, Jean.
Good morning. In your packet, there are a few abatements, and I'd like to request approval for those abatements.
So move, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion. I need a second. Second. Any more discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, that's all I have for you.
All right, that was
Thank you.
quick and easy. Steve, Public Works.
No.
No, you're skipping.
County
Chelsea.
Board Works, I'm sorry. Auditors report, and County Board.
Steve?
Auditors report. Come on up.
I don't know if you heard or not, if we were just in the zone.
Go ahead, Chelsea.
Thanks.
I'm still reeling here.
Good morning, everybody.
Still angry.
First we have, well, the first two I have is the Morrison County Recreational Trails Association. So the first one I have is to approve the agreement with the county and the trail, the club.
So move, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion, I need a second.
Go ahead, Mike.
Second.
Second, Mike. Any more discussion? Not those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And then right behind this one is the agreement both with the county and the club and the resolution for this to move forward.
Gentlemen, I need a motion and a second.
Make a motion.
I got a motion?
Second.
Second. Any more discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then we
So we do
have-
the auditor's report too, right? Oh,
Yep.
all right.
So next we have Rich Perry Water and Sewer refund bonds
What's that on here?
that we spoke last planning session. And we're just looking to renew to save, on the screen up above, it shows that it's gonna approximately save $344,000 if we renew.
We just need to approve the resolution, and then this will go off to Rich Prairie.
Who was the first?
I did.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
This is a discussion we had in our planning session last week, saving them $344,000.
Makes good fiscal sense.
Yeah.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Next, I have exempt permits. I have two, and I'm looking for approval. The first one is Minnesota Deer Hunters Association of Morrison County to hold a raffle on May 20th, 2019 at Rice Creek Hunting and Recreation.
Gentlemen, I ask for a motion and a second.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion. I need a second.
Second.
Any more discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The second exempt permit I have is the Little Falls Fire Department Relief Association to hold a raffle on June 2nd, 2019 at the Falls Ballroom.
Motion?
I'll make a motion.
All right,
I'll
I need
second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And the next thing on the agenda that I have is our warrants. I'm looking for approval to pay the bills.
Motion to pay all the bills. This will be a
moved, Mr.
roll
Chair.
call. I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Commissioner Blaine?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Lemire?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you,
That's all I
Chelsea.
have today.
Thank you. Public Works, Steve.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Morning, Steve.
everyone.
Morning, Steve.
Items in your packet for your consideration today. The first being a project that you authorized for us to move forward in our transportation improvement program for the construction of sinuous soil and ground-in pavement markings. We received 3 proposals with AAA striping service submitting the low proposal of $352,505.02. This is 90% paid with highway safety improvement funds that we received through a solicitation process that we are competitively apply for. It's our recommendation that the board would authorize this contract and we would move forward with this work.
Gentlemen, this
So
will be a roll
moved.
call. I have a motion
Second.
from Commissioner Blaine, seconded from Commissioner Lemire. Any more discussion? If not, Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine.
Aye.
Myself, aye. Motion carried.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the next RBA is for consideration of proposals for a project that we've been working on for some time in cooperation with the City of Little Falls and Little Falls Township. We call this our airport road extension. Could you roll down to the map, Deb, then? So this project runs from the overpass of Highway 10 at 4th Street, straight to the east, where we're going to go on new alignment and tie into 160th Avenue, our County Road 256 is the Evergreen Road. We received and went through local road improvement. We applied for that and were successful. And so approximately $900,000 of this will come, of the $49,593.01 will come from state bonding money. We also extended the existing paved portion, included that, so we're going to mill that off and we are going to resurface that. So from Highway 10 to the road that goes south into the airport, that is a local project, that 49-25707. But we received 4 proposals. The abstract was included in your packet. And the lowest responsible bidder that we received was Knife River Corporation in the amount $948,644.60. And so everything looks to be correct, and there isn't any reason that we wouldn't want to see this awarded to Knife River, and that's our recommendation to the board.
I'll ask for motion.
So moved.
I have a motion. I need a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Those in favor?
No, roll call, please. Roll
Oh,
call,
yeah,
please.
yeah. Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine.
Aye.
Myself is aye. Motion carried.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the next 3 requests for board actions kind of relate together. This is, again, another project that we've been working with in conjunction with Buckman Township and Benton County. Benton County is proposing to reconstruct County Road 78. About a half a mile to the north of their 78 was a Buckman Township road that was carrying approximately 500 vehicles a day. We entered into an agreement with Buckman Township to convert this over to a county road, so we have a consistent jurisdiction, a county jurisdiction, from Nature Road all the way down into Benton County to where their project ends. So we put that in place a year or so ago. Benton County was leading this project in terms of the design and will lead the project through construction. And so what we are now in a position to do is follow through with our agreement with Buckman Township. We need to designate that segment of roadway as a county road. We're going to designate it, or propose to designate it with your approval, as County Road 286. Benton County and Morrison also, Benton has asked for us to enter into an agreement for covering the costs of the engineering work that is being done, and also then the construction, staking, and inspection as the project moves forward, and that we will pay our share of the construction costs for the segment that is under our jurisdiction. And then the last resolution is to concur in the award with Benton County to Knife River, which is a little bidder on the project. And so if we could begin with the RBA number 3, which would be designate this segment as County Road 286, and that resolution was included in your packet.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion. I need a second.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Then the next action, we'd ask that the board would authorize the chairman and the administrator to enter into the administrative agreement with Benton County. This was reviewed by the county attorney without objection, and so it should be ready for execution.
So moved, Mr.
I
Chair.
have a motion. I need a second. I believe this is a roll call. Yeah.
No.
No? 308. Oh, I'm looking. All right. Motion, I got a motion, a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Then the third RBA is the concurrence with Benton County. They've contingently awarded this to Knife River based on you concurring, and this resolution would concur with award to Knife River.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion, and I need a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
This one is, because it's money.
Commissioner Blaine.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
Myself is aye. Motion carried.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, then the final RBA is a request that we have discussed at the planning meeting relative to supporting funding in this legislative session for transportation. AMC is lobbying with the legislature and the governor to have some type of a transportation funding package adopted. This resolution doesn't lay out how that would be funded. That's their work to negotiate some type of a package. But the important thing of the resolution is that it calls for whatever it is, that it be distributed through the Highway Users Trust Fund. And the Highway Users Trust Fund provides that all jurisdictions that that distribution comes from the trust fund would get something out of it. That would be the townships who get town road monies, town bridge money comes out of the trust fund, and then the distribution to the cities over 5,000 population. All the counties receive money out of the trust fund, and then MnDOT main source of funding is through the trust fund. I think that's very important because a lot of revenues over the past couple of years have been big chunks that are competitive, and some of the rural counties have a difficult time in competing when you're looking at trying to compete with counties and cities that have huge traffic volumes and congestion and those type of things. This method will provide that all of us will get something out of it to help pay for our transportation system.
Gentlemen, I'll ask for a motion.
Make a motion.
I need a second.
Second.
Any more discussion? If not,
I have one.
Go ahead.
Remember that highway of commerce, or what do you call that?
Corridors of
commerce. Did that come out of the trust fund then?
No, that was a $400 million bonding. That was competitive.
Okay.
Yes, and I mean that's a good example because kind of one of the worst locations we have in our county in the city of Royalton for congestion. What they were trying to accomplish with that didn't make it, and you can see how hard it is to get included in that work.
That's what we're competing with. Yes. Okay. I was just curious. Thanks.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Steve, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Administration report.
All right, Mr. Chair, I have a couple of items. One is in your board packet, one got added after the fact. First item is Lake Shamana Lake Improvement District Establishment Order Revision. As you recall, last week when we were chatting, as you recall, numerous times we've chatted about Lake Shamana Lake Improvement District and the order of establishment and the need for some revision of that document. You as a board indicated early on in the process that you want to ensure there's adequate public engagement in this process due to the fact that members are very vocal and ought to be concerned and want to be able to provide input in terms of how they want this organization that they asked you back in 2015 to form and how they want it run. And so part of this is going to include initiating this process with an intent to do so, and then I've been instructed to work to provide a mailing to all members with this initial draft and then seek comment. I will then summarize those comments, provide them to you, and you can then offer direction and input on what it is you would like to see in a finalized draft that goes out for public hearing and ultimate consideration for you whether or not you want to revise it and based upon that public hearing and public comment. So that's what we're doing today, is the start of that process. The resolution and the proposed document is attached. The resolution essentially says what I just did, probably more eloquently, though, in terms of engaging or initiating this process to engage the public in it.
I'll ask for a motion first, please.
Make a motion, Mr. Chair.
In a second. And again, this is something that we've discussed numerous times about this the Shamana Lake Improvement District. So this is just the start of the end, I hope.
The start of the process that we're working on to try to address some of the main things are the revenue generation and the tools used for that, the authority that the Lake Improvement District has to enter into certain agreements or engage in certain practices, and then the public process for governance, like the membership or the Lake Improvement District Board, how they're voted on and elected, things of that nature are notifications. Yep, that input process. So that's how I would kind of simply surmise the three different issues.
Sure. I had somebody call me yesterday, they wanted to know why we were giving them more authority, and I said we aren't, we're just trying to identify what authority they have. Is that kind of correct?
Nope, there is more authority that's identified in this. So I guess I wouldn't say, no, we're not giving them more. But
doesn't it kind of bring it to reality of what's really happening, to go through the whole process, to make sure everybody's notified, to make sure?
Yep, that's part of it, is that public input and that notification process. And then there's questions on the authority also in terms of what they have the ability to do. And as you recall, it isn't just blindly or blankly or giving them all authority that a board can issue to a lake improvement district. You guys, there was discussion about what right now is identified, but it was also clear that the programs that they would enter into and the projects they would enter into not only get voted on by the membership, but then come to this board also. So there's kind of that process identified about what authority they would have for different programs and different projects.
We're giving them more authority, but more hoops to jump through to get to an end. Multiple contacts with the members. So there's email, there's mailings, there's time frame differences, so they, how to vote, what's going to be on the ballots.
But that's just kind of clarifying all the things that they've been doing to make sure they're done in a proper manner, right? That each step's followed, or am I kind of thinking?
Well, like in, for example, how I'd look at that, you're right. I mean, that's part of it, but we talked about 19, for example, notwithstanding the delegated powers enumerated below, the directors are not delegated the authority to establish and finance projects without first securing approval of voters at the annual meeting and securing the board's authorization for financing such project pursuant to that statute. So you could say you don't need to do that, and that would be granting the authority without the involvement of, without specifically identifying the steps. So we are allowing them authority, but we're kind of checking it with making sure the membership is approving that.
That's kind of what I meant.
Okay,
when I
sorry.
said, well, when I said that we're just putting reins on what's happening and how it happens to make sure everybody's notified properly. So
But that's in addition. So that financing component wasn't in the previous order of establishment. So we're adding that, but we're making sure that there's processes defined pretty specifically about how that gets done.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any more discussion? I have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Chair, what I have, and just to let you know how I intend to work on this, I have a draft communication that will go out to the membership, so a letter explaining why it is we're doing what we're doing. And I was hoping maybe Commissioner Lemire would take a look at that before we send it out, just it's in his district. I'm working with also Amy and Chelsea to put that out, and I had John Kolb offer some assistance in it. And then I want to put the communication, I want to put the obvious draft of the order of communication and then some guidance in terms of how they need to submit comment. I want to get that out by the end of this week and then offer them probably three to 4 weeks response time, and that's when we'll address it again as a group after I've compiled those results or that comment, and then allow you the opportunity to help direct how you want the rest of the process to go. Make sense?
That sounds good.
I also have added to the board packet just to remind you of the statutory responsibility that we have. Last meeting, we closed the tail end of the meeting to go over my annual performance evaluation, and then I'm obligated to make sure we recap that at an open meeting. So just to reiterate, you know, I've been doing this 10 years now. That is amazing how quickly time flies. And so the 10th time I'm doing this. So it's always a good opportunity to meet with you and to talk about what we've done over the last year and what we need to do moving forward. I've been very proud of the efforts that we've accomplished together. I certainly value your input and your insight on how to run this organization, and on a daily basis I'm able to be there doing a job that I love. So I appreciate your support in that. I think we have a good direction from you in terms of where we're at, and I enjoy the 270 employees I get to work with every day and the work that we do, which isn't always easy but certainly rewarding when it comes to public service. So thank you for that opportunity, and we'll continue on. Anything for you guys or anything else that we need to talk about?
Mike and I, we just kind of went through, what was this, Monday? Friday, or what is today, Monday? Friday we went through.
Mike?
Yeah, Mike Wilson. We kind of walked through the new construction, boy, they're
Yeah, okay.
it's moving on.
Yes, yep. That is one big component of this job that's been time consuming the last few years, well, planning wise, probably 4 years, but seeing it come to fruition is good. And that building, that investment for those taxpayers is going to be something that's preserved and useful and really meets customer needs for a long time moving forward. And so that certainly has been something interesting and fun to watch and a lot to learn, but it's been good.
Clarify, that sound thing, whatever it's called, is that throughout, because Mike and I were talking about, is that throughout the whole building, or is that going to be just in some designated areas?
It's in 4 different zones. It'll be by the time the completion of the project is there. It's where there's a lot of open area, where there's a lot of staff and open areas. So right now it's in the upper level of that central building. It'll be in the upper and the lower level of the east building, where there's a lot of staff in cubicles or the front desk or the front area. And then it'll be over in motor vehicle on the west side when that's complete. Again,
Room will not have it. Correct?
No.
Yeah, okay.
No.
Just, yeah.
Just
okay.
where there's a lot of employees and those serving the public at one
That
time.
clarifies that, thank you.
To help manage that a little bit. So yeah.
Anything else? And
Schedules.
what schedules are, what's the week?
April 14th
Okay.
through April 27th.
How about we start with Commissioner Wilson?
15th, strategic planning. I've got 2 o'clock here, is that right?
Yep. Yep.
The 16th, I've got Lake Shannon up for some reason. Is there something going on with Lake Shannon?
I don't know what that is. You did have that and it populated in some other people's calendars, and I don't know for sure what that was
mine
from.
too, and
But it showed canceled on one of the calendars.
Okay, so we can delete that.
Yep.
Yeah, it does have it on.
I would get rid of it. 'cause I
Yeah,
don't
I
know
will.
what else.
Well, I just look at it, because I didn't have it on here, so.
Okay, we got a planning session at 8:30. Community development, I have at noon.
12:15?
What's that?
Is it 12:15?
Yep, 12:15. Okay, on the 17th, we've got the MTWCHD board. Is that one in Wadena at 4 o'clock? That's for all the commissioners.
It says Pizza Ranch.
Or Pizza, yes, in Wadena. What did I say?
Well, I don't know if it's in
Yep,
Wadena. I just
Pizza
see
Ranch in
Pizza Ranch.
Wadena. That's
Yep.
the one that we all go to at an annual event.
that's the 17th
Yep.
at 4 o'clock.
Yes, at Pizza Ranch. Then on the 18th, I've got Connect with Your Commissioner at 8 o'clock. Is that at the courthouse?
Yep.
No, I believe that one is the Public Works.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Yep.
Okay, Public
Yep.
Works is that one? Okay.
What date was that one again?
The 18th, it was added after.
Oh, yeah, I got it. Yep, yep, yep.
Okay, then on the 23rd, I have a board meeting at 9. 24th, I have airport at noon. Okay, let me see.
You
If
said
I-
the 24th
Yeah.
is the airport? They switched it?
Why do I have 6 o'clock for this public hearing or something for the airport? What is that?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I got that too, on the 24th.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why.
Airport hearing, City Hall, it says, 6 PM.
Okay,
Is
that
one
must
of
be,
that
that must be
planning-
what my airport's for then.
Must be the zoning thing, is that what it
That
is?
would
Is
probably,
there-
must be, have to do with that zoning then on the runway.
It might be.
Yeah.
I'm not all
So
that
that's at
familiar with
6
this.
o'clock?
Airport zoning board, is that?
Well, I think City Hall
It's at
probably.
City Hall, but again, I just don't, or, well, it would be here,
Yeah,
yeah.
it'll be here.
But I just
Yeah.
don't know.
I'll
Some
have to
public
check
here.
that out.
I'll have to ask, maybe Amy would be able to help.
Yeah, I think that's got to do with the
I
runway.
think, and that's my
Yeah.
guess.
Okay.
So it's not my 12 o'clock airport
That
meeting
one was
then?
usually on the 18th.
Yep, okay.
Do you have that one?
No, I don't have it on here.
Should I add it?
Yes, do, and I'll add it too. Sorry, it's taking me so long here, folks.
Hey, I like putting you first sometimes there,
Not a
Commissioner
problem.
Wilson.
Board meeting, garage, so then I got Mississippi Headwaters at 10 o'clock in Walker on the 26th. And I think that's all you asked for, right? Or did you
Yep,
go
yep.
through 30th? Okay.
Commissioner Lemire.
On the 15th, I got strategy planning,
Strategic.
strategic planning,
Yep.
2 o'clock.
Yep, these are the Connect with Your Commissioner
And one,
meetings
and
to
one
talk
at
about.
2 o'clock and 6:30, right?
Yep.
No, that's
No,
on the
that's on
16th.
the 16th.
So the 6:30 one, we don't have one on the
Yep.
16th?
Not on the 15th.
On the 16th, we have one at
Yep.
6:30. Oh, what
Yes.
did you say? Oh, I'm sorry.
The 15th, I got 2 to 3.
Yep, oh, okay, yep.
16th, strategy planning, 2 to 3, and strategic planning, 6:30 to 7:30.
Yep.
We got water task force at 9:30 on the 17th at City
Yeah, I
Hall,
got- yeah, I got
9:30.
that one too.
That's on the 17th, the water plan, is that what you said?
Yeah.
We should all be there for that?
18th, did you say connect with your
You're all
commissioner on the
invited
18th?
for that. You're all invited. Anyway. What? Say it again.
Connect with your commissioner? We did that, Mike did got that one.
18th.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep,
That's at 8 o'clock.
yep. And that's at
Board
Public Works
meeting.
though, the one on 18th.
Airport hearing. What's administrative professional? Oh, that's something else. That's it.
Excuse me, water plan, is that at Camp Ripley, or where's that at?
That's here.
It's Little Falls Council Chamber here.
I think that's what Lance, is that with Lance?
Yeah.
I remember that coming through.
Commissioner Blaine.
Is that
9:30 a.m.
The connect with the commissioner on the 18th is the strat plan.
The same thing,
Yeah.
yes. They were
Yeah.
all two different things.
Which is at Public Works at 8 o'clock.
Other than what was stated, Mr. Chair, the only other thing I've got is Region 5 on the 25th. I'm glad you've mentioned that, so I make sure I get this, because I don't have it on there, that, oh, it is on there. I'm sorry. The Health Board, the All-Commissioner Health Board dealie up in, and that's at the Pizza Ranch in Wadena.
Is that it then, Commissioner Blaine?
That wipes me out.
All right. I have TCC on the 18th at 5 o'clock. We got all the strategic planning done for that week. Again, I don't know what time the employee appreciation breakfast, that's on the 23rd. That's after the, oh, okay, so that'll be, they're not serving the food here, I'm assuming.
No, it's set up in different stations around the government center.
So can you explain that, just for the record, for
Yeah,
Commissioner
I
Blaine?
don't have that.
Well, every year, the leadership of the organization puts together and funds an employee appreciation breakfast, usually in the week, somewhere in the second or third week of April. And that's what your kind personal donation helped to fund. We've done different things. Right now with construction, it's been a little bit more difficult because we normally would have everybody gather in meeting room 1 and allow them to be able to go through and visit and such. Last year and then this year, I believe they're following the same. We're kind of setting up continental breakfast stations for people to be able to go, and as a thank you to staff for the hard work that they do, and just a personal additional thanks from leadership to the staff. And so those will be at the Government Center and one out at Public Works. So you're welcome to come and just kind of say hi and mill about during that time before the board meeting if you want, and just say thank you yourself.
And that starts at 7:30 on the Tuesday the 23rd. And it's before the board meeting, so it starts at 7:30 here. How about Public Works? Is it 7:30?
I think they're setting it up both places, but you're welcome to. What?
Where's it going to be at?
There's going to be a couple of different stations set up at the Government Center and one over at
You
Public
go there,
Works.
it might be at Social Service, it could be at the DMV.
Yep.
You know, you don't
Well,
know.
yeah.
Well, I know.
Oh, Chelsea.
Chelsea's here.
To, as far as where we can help and work with that, because we help put that on. Perfect, thank you.
Public Works will have hot food, the courthouse will have cold. No,
He's wrong, he's wrong.
Yeah, that's right. That's Commissioner Blaine. You're definitely supposed to head that up, the new guy on the block.
Mr. Chair, and the good thing is next year we'll have our meeting rooms back, and so we can hopefully do that where it's a little bit more centralized and you get that whole effect of being able to visit and say thank you yourself. And just a reminder, we have tomorrow is that initial Connect with Your Commissioner state session at 8:30, and then on Friday there are two of them, one at 10 and one at 11 in the historic courtroom.
Tomorrow at 8:30?
Yep.
Wait, what am I missing here again?
For this week, oh, you weren't.
I wasn't paying attention as I was talking to him.
It's okay, I'm used to doing this 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, you guys cut me off on my last one here.
Tomorrow morning at 8:30, and then Friday at 10 and 11 are Connect with Your Commissioner sessions. And that, again, as a reminder, is just a way for you as a board to connect with staff and to be able to allow some question and answer. And the first topic this go-around is going to be our strategic plan and the rollout of that, and your input on what and why our organization goes through that, how you as leaders apply that to your decision-making, and how it impacts employees. And we'll also give them an update on the Highway 27 project and how that will possibly impact, or what employees need to pay attention to when it comes to that project as that kicks off in May for our area. So,
anything else, Deb?
no, I don't think so.
What are you guys discussing that we missed? Okay. All right, anything else, gentlemen, before we adjourn? Let's adjourn. I need a motion to adjourn. I have a motion, I need a second.
Yeah.
Any more discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. We are adjourned at 12:06.